Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're doing something a little bit different. We are basically stepping into a time machine.
Okay.
And we're dialing the date back to November 4th, 1964.
A Wednesday night.
Exactly. A Wednesday night, 9 p.m. We're heading into the living room of Jane Roberts and Rob Butts in Elmira, New York.
Right.
And we are going to unpack a session that is, it's equal parts domestic comedy, high strangeness mechanics, and honestly, by the end of it, a full-blown psychological horror movie.
It really runs the gamut, doesn't it? You have everything from, like, missing household appliances to premonitions of death, all wrapped up in this exploration of how consciousness actually works.
It's a relaxed, chilling, and slightly humorous vibe today.
Yes, it is a wild ride.
And we're looking specifically at Session 104 of the early sessions, Book 3 of the Seth material. And just a quick heads up before we dive in, this is distributed free of charge on all major platforms for educational purposes.
And we absolutely have to give credit where credit is due. All this material comes from the Seth material and the publisher New Awareness Network. And, you know, if what we talk about today sparks that curiosity, and I really think it will, you have to go to the source. You can find these books at sethcenter.com/the early sessions.
Absolutely. So the mission for today is to unpack what Seth, the entity, speaking through Jane Roberts, called a peach of a session.
A peach! I love that.
It's great. We're going to look at the stubbornness of the ego. We're going to look at a very specific red leather chair in New York City.
And the imaginary coattails.
We have to talk about the imaginary coattails. It's one of my favorite images in the whole book.
Me too.
But, you know, before we get to the really metaphysical stuff, we have to start with something incredibly mundane.
We do, because that's what makes this so grounded, right? It's that juxtaposition.
Yes.
You have this disembodied personality, Seth, speaking through Jane, delivering all this complex philosophy. But then right at the beginning of the notes for this session, we get an update on a thermostat cover.
The famous case of the missing thermostat.
It sounds so ridiculous, but verification is such a huge part of these early sessions.
It is.
So back in session 100, Seth had told Rob that their landlord, a guy named Jimmy Spaziani, had accidentally thrown away a missing cover for their thermostat. And Seth was very specific. He said Jimmy dumped it in a place by a hill.
Which is such a weirdly specific detail for a cosmic entity to care about. Sort of like, I hold the secrets of the universe, but also, let me tell you about your garbage.
Exactly. It's so funny. So in the notes for session 104, we get the follow-up. Rob asks Jimmy about it, and Jimmy confirms it. He says, yeah, I cleared out some rubbish last spring, and he took it to the Elmira City dump.
And here's the kicker. What does the dump look like?
Jimmy says the area is, and this is a quote, all small hills, and it covers many acres.
Boom. There it is.
Seth was right. Now, the cover is gone. Jimmy says there's no way to find it in acres and acres of trash.
Of course not.
But the specific detail, the thing about the hill, that was 100% accurate.
I love that. It feels like Seth is doing a mic check. Testing. 1, 2.
Oh.
I can see your garbage.
Yeah.
It just establishes this baseline of accuracy before we, jump off the deep end. Why do you think that matters so much? Why spend time on a thermostat?
Well, I think it matters because if you can trust the small stuff, you're more likely to trust the big stuff.
That makes sense.
If Seth can correctly identify a plastic cover in a landfill in Elmira, maybe, just maybe, he can also accurately describe the nature of the human soul.
It builds a bridge of credibility.
Exactly. For Rob and Jane, they were basically scientists in their own living room. They needed proof. They needed data.
And we're definitely jumping off the deep end in this session. Because earlier that day, Jane had been experimenting with what they called psychological time.
Right. And for listeners who might be new to this, psychological time, or psi time, is basically this deep meditative state.
It's not just chilling out, though.
No, not at all. It's an active investigation. Jane turns her focus inward to actually explore the landscape of her own consciousness.
Correct. And apparently on this particular Wednesday, she had a bit of a breakthrough. Seth opens the session by saying, Ruburt really came up with a peach.
A peach! I love the 1964 slang. It's great. And Ruburt, of course, being a name that Seth uses for Jane's greater identity, her soul name.
It is charming. But then he immediately pivots to this brilliant and slightly hilarious analogy about the ego.
Yes.
He compares the ego to a dog.
This is the part that just It cracked me up because we usually think of the ego as this, this master controller, right?
Yes.
The CEO of the brain, the one in charge.
We do. We think of it as the villain or the boss or
Yeah.
the thing we need to transcend.
But Seth paints a very, very different picture. He says that the inner self, the soul, the deeper part of you, it knows what it's capable of. It wants to expand. It wants to leave the body. It wants to explore other realities. But the ego senses that potential, like a dog sniffing danger.
A frightened dog. That's the key.
A frightened dog, yes. Seth says, and this is a direct quote, "A frightened dog takes very careful handling, or you may lose a hand and gain very little."
That is such a vivid image. You're trying to expand your consciousness. You're trying to have this profound mystical experience.
Yeah.
And your ego is there like a nervous chihuahua just ready to bite you because it's scared.
It completely reframes the ego. It creates a sympathetic view. It's not the villain. It's just this confused, overprotective guardian.
And this plays directly into what happened to Jane that morning. She tried to let her inner self flow out through the top of her head.
And she describes this as a rushing out sensation. It wasn't a gentle drift. It was a surge.
And it happened fast. Seth says it happened so quickly that Ruburt's old dog of an ego was taken by surprise.
It was catching a nap on the porch.
It was dozing. Exactly. The ego was dozing off. The inner self makes a break for the exit, and suddenly the ego wakes up.
And here's where we get the title of our deep dive.
Here it is. Seth says the warning wasn't sufficient for the ego. It realized what was happening too late. So what does it do? It yelped and pulled the escaping inner self back by its imaginary coattails.
Imaginary coattails. I picture this cartoon moment, Wile E. Coyote style. The soul is flying out the window,
Right.
and the ego just grabs the fabric of this non-existent coat and just yanks it back inside.
It's hilarious, but isn't that also a perfect description of that jolt that people feel?
Oh, totally.
When you're falling asleep and you suddenly twitch awake, or when you're meditating and you suddenly snap back to reality. That's the coattails moment.
It is. It's the hypnic jerk, but explained metaphysically. The ego panics because its primary job is to keep the body safe, and it thinks the body is dying or being abandoned.
It doesn't understand that the inner self can leave and come back.
No, it just sees the front door flying open and it freaks out.
So the ego yelps. Jane snaps back into her body. But she didn't give up.
And I think this next part is really practical for anyone who's interested in this kind of exploration.
It is.
She tried to calm the ego down.
She did. She used a specific suggestion. She told herself that she would proceed slowly.
Which sounds logical. I mean, that seems like the right move. Okay, ego, calm down. We'll take it easy. Go slow.
You'd think so. But Seth critiques this. He kind of acts like a consciousness coach here. He says slow is the wrong word.
Why? Why is slow a bad word to use?
Because slow implies delay and resistance. It's a neutral word. It doesn't actually promise security. It just promises that things will take a long time.
I see.
If you tell that frightened dog, I'm going to walk away from you slowly, the dog is still scared you're leaving. It's just watching you leave in slow motion.
That's a great point. It doesn't solve the core fear. So what's the magic word?
Seth says the magic word is safe.
I will progress safely. Exactly. He says, the phrase, I will progress safely, is an excellent one to use because it reassures the ego. It promises a return trip.
You have to treat the ego like that worried parent. You have to say, I'm going out, but I promise I will be back for dinner and I won't get hurt.
That's it. If you just say, I'm going, the ego panics. If you say, I'm coming back safely, the ego can relax. It changes the whole dynamic from resistance to cooperation.
And Seth uses another analogy here that I think is fantastic.
The airplane.
He compares leaving the physical body to flying an airplane.
Right. He says landing is important without a crash.
Which, yeah, I would agree with that. I think we can all get on board with that. Nobody wants to crash land their soul.
No. And he says he anticipates no airline disasters, but maybe a few bumpings along the ground.
And Jane actually felt that, right? She felt the bumping.
She did. This is another key detail. In the notes, she mentions that during these attempts to leave her body, she often feels a literal bump on the top of her head.
Like she's hitting a ceiling.
Or like she's re-entering the body too hard. She describes it as an unpleasant physical sensation.
See, and this is so important. We tend to think of these things as purely mental or imaginary.
Right, it's all in your head.
But for Jane, this was tactile. She felt the rush out, she felt the yank of the coattails, and she felt the physical bump on her head.
It really grounds the experience, no pun intended. It's not just I had a thought, it's I had a collision. It shows that for them, this wasn't just philosophy, it was physics.
This is physics we don't quite understand yet?
Precisely. And speaking of physical changes, we really need to talk about what happened to Jane's voice during this session, because this is where the whole vibe in the room changes.
Oh, the voice. I remember reading this part. Rob, who usually takes these meticulous, almost clinical notes, he sounds almost disturbed here.
He makes a very specific note of it. Usually, Jane speaks for Seth in a relatively normal voice, maybe a bit deeper or faster than her own.
But not this time.
Not in session 104. After the break, her voice changes completely.
How does Rob describe it?
He calls it formal, harsh, and louder, and then he says it had a sing-song quality, where she was emphasizing specific syllables and elongating them.
That's chilling.
It is. I mean, just imagine sitting in your living room with your wife, and suddenly she starts speaking in this harsh, loud, sing-song chant.
And she keeps it up.
For the rest of the session. It's not just a quick change. It's a sustained alteration of her entire vocal pattern.
And Jane's reaction after the session is really interesting, too. She didn't feel like it was her.
No, not at all. She said she felt like she wasn't even using her own vocal cords. She felt like a vehicle. And the notes say explicitly, Jane did not particularly care for the idea of serving as a channel.
That's a really important nuance. We throw the word channeling around a lot today. But in 1964, that term wasn't really in vogue yet, and Jane was deeply uncomfortable with the implication.
Right. She didn't want to be a meat puppet for a ghost.
She wanted to understand the mechanics of it. She didn't want to just surrender control.
It shows her skepticism, even while she's the one doing it perfectly. She's not just buying into this. She's wrestling with it constantly. She felt used, in a way, even though she consented to the session. That voice change really frightened her a little.
It adds this whole other layer of tension to the thing. It's not just a cozy chat with a wise spirit. It's a physical takeover.
It is.
But Seth, in his new loud sing-song voice, decides to do some, I don't know, party tricks. Or rather, some very specific clairvoyance.
The sales predictions.
Yes. Seth mentions that a sale for Jane's writing has happened, and more are coming. But then Jane, or Seth through Jane, starts getting visual. She starts doing what we would call remote viewing today.
It's incredibly impressive. She starts describing the people who are involved in these future sales, people she has never met, never seen, people in New York City.
And let's get into the details, because this isn't that generic, horoscope stuff. It's not, I see a tall, dark stranger.
No, it's the opposite of that. It's almost bizarrely specific. She describes a collegiate-type man. Okay, fine. Graying hair. But then she zooms in.
The details.
Large feet. And a reddish faded mustache.
Large feet. Who guesses that? If you're faking it, why would you ever mention someone's feet size?
You wouldn't. It's the kind of detail that doesn't fit a narrative archetype. It's just raw data.
And there's another man.
Another one. Tall, thin, gawky, with protuberant eyes.
Which is a very polite way of saying he's bug-eyed.
It is. And then she describes the setting, New York City. It's 10 p.m. A small office, not elegant. And she sees a very specific piece of furniture.
The red leather chair.
A modern red leather chair. And she gets even more specific. Short, round wooden legs. No arms.
That is so precise. Short, round wooden legs. It's incredible.
And she even gets this confused signal about the rug. She says she feels like there should be a rug in the room, but it's either missing or it's been sent out for cleaning.
So she's picking up on the absence of an object.
Yes. It's fascinating because it shows how this information actually comes through. It's not a perfect 4K movie download to her brain.
No.
It's fragments. It's a chair here, a mustache there, a weird feeling about a missing rug.
It's sensory data coming through a filter.
And Seth explains later that pushing Jane too hard for these details can cause distortion, not because she's unwilling, but because she's getting tired.
Right.
It's physically exhausting to translate these non-physical signals into English words like red leather chair. The brain has to hunt for the right vocabulary to match the image.
It really highlights the effort involved. It's a translation job, not a dictation. But Seth doesn't stop with Jane's writing sales. He turns his attention to Rob, too.
Yes, Rob the artist.
And Seth drops a bit of a bombshell on Rob about his painting, about his creative process.
Yeah, Rob had noted that he prefers painting made-up characters. He doesn't like using models. He likes to just invent a face from his imagination and paint it. He thinks that's where his creativity lies.
And Seth basically says, actually, no.
Pretty much. Seth says, you will discover, Joseph, which is his name for Rob, that your ability to receive so-called telepathic data is showing itself.
So the made-up faces, aren't made up at all.
Seth claims they are telepathic images of real entities or people. Rob is tuning in to someone, somewhere, and painting their portrait without realizing it.
Wow. That completely redefines creativity, doesn't it?
It totally does. It suggests that what we call imagination might just be another word for unconscious perception.
So when you think you're inventing a character or a face, you might actually be seeing someone across the world, or maybe even across time.
You're not generating it, you're receiving it.
That's a very cool thought. I didn't imagine you, I just heard you calling. It makes the artist less of a creator and more of a reporter.
It validates Rob's artistic process as a psychic process, and Seth encourages him to pay closer attention to his dreams, because that's where more of this data is coming through. Rob often dismisses his dreams as nonsense, but Seth is saying, no, look closer, that's your raw material.
Okay, so the session ends. It's 10:04 p.m. Jane is tired. Rob has his notes. But the story of this deep dive, it isn't over.
Not by a long shot.
Because the days following this session, well, this is where the chilling part of the vibe really kicks in.
The aftermath notes, these are from Jane's personal journals from November 5th to November 9th, and they're deeply unsettling. They really read like a descent into something very dark.
To say the least. Let's talk about the physical sensations first. We talked about the bump on the head, but this gets way more extreme.
It does. On November 6th, so 2 days after the session, Jane lies down for another experiment, and she reports a feeling of her body dissolving below the chest.
Dissolving? I mean, that is a terrifying word to use.
And she says she felt an extreme coldness in her hands, a feeling of imbalance, like her whole head was tilting to the left. She says her body felt like it was vibrating gently.
My limbs very cold to the touch. That's what she wrote.
Yeah, and she felt like her body might rise, but she was anchored by this intense cold. It's a classic dissociation experience. She's losing track of her physical form.
So she's experimenting with leaving the body, like Seth encouraged.
But the physical feedback she's getting is coldness and dissolution.
And then comes the emotional hit. Because it's not just physical coldness, it's this wave of emotional dread.
Right. In the middle of this experience, she feels a sudden, intense sorrow, a desperate need for Rob, and she thinks, is he dead?
And she actually confuses Rob's name with her stepfather's, Walt, for a second.
It's just a surge of raw panic. And this theme of death seems to just haunt her for the next few days.
It culminates in a dream on November 8th. The black envelope dream.
This sounds straight out of a gothic horror story. It really does.
Describe the dream for us.
In the dream, a young boy hands her a long, legal-sized black envelope.
A black envelope. That is never good.
Never good. And the return address is written in black ink. It's from Helen McIlwain.
Who was a friend of her mother's,
Yeah.
right? A deceased friend.
A deceased friend. So she is literally getting mail from the dead.
Chilling. And what's inside?
A notification of a death. Jane immediately assumes it's her mother. But, and this is the kind of psychological detail that makes it feel so real, she says her reasoning in the dream was cold-blooded.
What does she mean by that?
She felt a sense of relief. She thought, well, I have always feared my mother's death, and she was almost glad that the waiting was finally over.
Oof. That's raw. That is the kind of thought you don't even want to admit to yourself, let alone write down.
But then she reads the note inside. It's not her mother. It's a young girl named Linda.
Linda. Do they know Linda?
She mentions a possible connection, but she's not sure. She wonders if it's a niece. But the specificity, a black envelope, a dead friend's return address, a girl named Linda, it lingered with her. It didn't feel like just a nightmare. It felt like information.
And then there was the mirror vision. This is the one that actually gave me goosebumps when I read the transcript.
November 9th. She's dozing. She silently asks if she is being warned about a death. And suddenly, she has a vision of a hand mirror being held out to her. She sees it edge on.
And she refuses to look into it.
She got too scared. She wrote, I guess I was afraid I would see my own face.
Her own dead face.
That was the fear. She panicked and broke the connection.
It's just such a stark contrast to Seth's tone, isn't it?
Oh, completely.
Seth is so calm, so matter of fact. Oh, it's just an airplane landing, nothing to worry about, just a few bumps. And meanwhile, Jane is living in a psychological thriller.
Yeah.
She's seeing black envelopes and refusing to look in mirrors for fear of seeing her own death.
It really highlights the bravery of what they were doing. We look back at the Seth material now as this established body of wisdom, this incredible philosophy.
Right.
But in 1964, there were just two people in the living room poking at the fabric of reality with a stick, and reality was poking back hard.
And the ego, that frightened dog,
Yeah.
was right to be a little scared.
The dog was terrified.
Because when you open that door, don't just get the wisdom of the universe.
No.
You get the cold hands, the dissolving body, the dreams of death. You have to process the fear to get to the insight.
And that's the safety versus fear dynamic Seth was talking about. You have to convince the ego that despite the black envelopes and the scary mirrors, the journey is fundamentally safe.
I will progress safely.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just a nice little mantra. It's a survival mechanism for the psyche.
It is. If you don't have that safety protocol in place, the fear can consume you. And Jane was right on the edge of that fear.
It's interesting because Seth seems to treat these fears as, almost negligible, while Jane is feeling them as genuine existential threats. Why the disconnect?
I think it's perspective. Seth is operating from outside of linear time. He sees the whole picture. He knows Jane is safe. He knows that what we call death isn't an end.
Right.
But Jane is still in the body. She's still the pilot trying not to crash the plane. To Seth, a crash is just a transition. To Jane, it's the end of the world.
That's a powerful way to put it. The pilot is sweating, gripping the controls, and air traffic control is on the radio saying, relax, it's just a little turbulence.
Exactly. And Rob is there in the co-pilot seat, taking meticulous notes, trying to keep the plane steady.
So what do we take away from session 104? When we zoom out from the red chairs and the black envelopes, what's the core lesson here for us?
I think we take away the mechanics of the safe trip, the idea that consciousness is portable, but, it requires a flight plan.
You can't just jump out the window.
You have to handle the dog first. You have to reassure the ego.
Right. You have to respect your own internal resistance.
We also take away the validation, the thermostat, the red chair that suggests this isn't just imagination. And we take away the very human element, the humor of the ego pulling on imaginary coattails, and the genuine visceral fear that comes with exploring the unknown.
It's a powerful reminder that this kind of spiritual exploration is messy. It's not always incense and peaceful music.
No. Sometimes it's a yelping dog in a city dump.
And sometimes it's a red leather chair with short, round wooden legs.
Exactly. This stuff is in the details. It's in the bump on the head and the cold in the hands. It's a physical, tactile journey, not just a mental one.
It really is. And, if this deep dive sparked your curiosity, if you want to know more about what happened to Jane, or if they ever found out who Linda was, or what else Seth had to say about the mechanics of the soul, don't stop here.
You really have to read the source material. This was just one session. There are hundreds. And honestly, Rob's notes are just as fascinating as what Seth says.
They are.
Go to sethcenter.com/the early sessions. Get the books, read the notes for yourself. It is a rabbit hole worth going down. You get to see the evolution of their psychic ability in real time, doubts and all.
Absolutely. And hey, next time you try to meditate or explore your inner self, and you feel that sudden jolt or that wave of fear,
don't worry.
It's just your ego.
Watch out for its imaginary coattails.
And remember the magic word, safely.
Safely.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you the next deep dive.
Safe travels.